Hi everyone. I'm so honored to be here with all of you. What a treat. What a beautiful, beautiful way to spend our weekend. And I'm gonna start the session with a song called Into the Mystic. So I just invite you to close your eyes and join with me in the mystic. Thank you.
In your grace, in state of mind, the mystical state of mind. Into the mystic we walk, into the mystic we walk. Expansion of love, flying like a dove, our white wings we spread. It's just as you said, we walk into the mystic, hand in hand, surrender into the mystic. On a wave of love we stand. We have reached heaven. God, we are here. We have reached heaven, the one mind is everywhere. We are everywhere.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Here we go.
Welcome, everyone. Glad that you can be with us. Yeah. How beautiful that we have a topic called the Life of Mysticism. Really, really dear to our hearts. And a lot of times people will just ask questions, but one of the questions is, what is mysticism? That's the question. Yeah. And I always say, well, it just means devotion to God or devotion to love. It's very, very simple. It doesn't have a complicated definition. But I want us to use this session to really dive deep into the experience, because Jesus tells us in the manual for teachers of his course, in the clarification of terms, he says the ego will ask many questions that this course has no answer for. How did the impossible happen? To whom did the impossible happen? And many other forms. And yet he says there is no answer, but there is an experience that will come to end your doubting. So that's a good way to start our session. There is an experience that will come to end your doubting. Svava, you were just saying to me this morning, you were saying, wow, it's in the holy instant, there are no questions. Every question has dropped away.
Yeah.
That's where the stillness comes from, no questions. The ego is the questioning aspect.
Yeah, exactly. I was hearing yesterday that this world is a world of questions. And when we have questions, it's because we are uncertain. And the uncertainty is about the uncertainty of who we are in truth. So in the holy instant, all questions fall away. And it's only there we know who we are. It's the holy instant we are in alignment with God. Everything else falls away. Yeah.
And as you look at your experiences in this world as a human being, you know, sometimes if you study the lives of the mystics and the saints, then there's often some commonalities, and one of the commonalities that's almost like a precursor or like a little bit of foreshadowing of a life of mysticism is these mystical experiences, and they can come at any point of your life. I think for you, you had one, was it, you were about 10?
The
10
first
years
one
old.
I clearly remember, I was 10.
Yeah. You want to share a little bit
Sure.
about that for everybody so they wonder, what is a 10-year-old girl in Iceland doing, having mystical experience, and how do you deal with that as a 10-year-old?
Yeah, well, maybe I should start from the beginning. I was giving a cat that I loved so dearly, and one day I came home from school, and my mom told me that my cat had been hit by a car and was dead. And the cat was already gone. My mom had taken her to the hospital, and then she died in my mom's arms on the way. And so I never saw her again. And she was the love of my life. Slept with me, was with me all the time. She was just like my little baby. And so I was devastated. And the next day I cried and cried and cried all night, couldn't sleep. The next day I went to school, and I sat down on the playground, and I didn't even go into the building. And then when the bell rang, I walked back home, and I was always alone for some hours after school. So I opened the door and walked into the house, and in the hallway I could see all the way down to the living room. And I saw my grandmother sitting on the couch, sitting with my cat and patting my cat, and she looked at me, and I heard in my mind, "Svava, don't worry, I will take care of your cat." And then they disappeared. And my grandmother, she died when my mom was pregnant with me, so I only seen her on photos. But it was so real to me. And I walked into my room, and I was so like, what is going on? I heard this, and I felt like a relief as well that my cat was okay. And then I sat down on my bed and I asked God, can I die? Because they were so clear to me, and then they disappeared, and seemingly they were not around anymore. And then I asked God, can I die? And then suddenly I was kind of taken out of my room, of the body, and I was like floating in space. It was with stars and like endless black space. And I felt so loved and so safe, and I felt at home, and I just wanted to be there. It was like I found home. I felt God just in me, around me, and everywhere. And I don't know how long this lasted, but at some point I was kind of back in my room, and so I was back in my body, and I had my answer. My answer was, God's answer to me was that I am not a body, I cannot die. There is no death. So I had this huge experience of the truth. It was, but I didn't share it with anyone for many, many, many years. I had this feeling of no one would understand. And for a while after this experience, I would see things, different colors, and people walking and then disappearing, all kinds of strange experiences after that, and then it started fading a bit away. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's beautiful, because that gives you a little taste or a little foreshadowing of almost the destiny of Svava's life into a very mystical life that we could call mysticism. And that was just the taste of the tip of the iceberg. That was just the taster. Also in Iceland, you saw fairies, little fairies. Through your life, you've had Jesus appear to you. Jesus will just materialize and come and sit across from Svava and talk to her. In fact, when we first met, Jesus came and he sat in the same space that I was sitting in, wasn't it?
Before you came.
Before I came. He was there first. Then I came second.
He's the first.
Yeah, he's the first. That's right. I sat in his space. Okay. But I give you this as an example because these are the kind of things where you can have visualizations and you can have experiences where you seem to be transported into an experience that we could say is definitely not of this world. And some people would say, well, seeing fairies and having Jesus sit in front of you is not exactly of the world either. But it gives you a taste that when you are to have we'll say a lifetime that goes into a deep devotion where you don't really have the same ambitions that humans have, like ambitions for a career or ambitions for the future looking a certain way, your goals and ambitions. It's not surprising once you have these experiences that those ambitions fall away and you start getting drawn into this deep devotional inward life that is very uncharacteristic of human life. It's uncharacteristic of linear time, and it's uncharacteristic of most stories. And some of you maybe have had the privilege or the honor of actually reading a lot of literature on the mystics and the saints. Evelyn Underhill wrote a book on basically the history of mysticism, and of course there's much literature. Everybody's pretty familiar with Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross. There's mystics in all traditions. There's Buddhist mystics and Hindu mystics and Christian mystics and unaffiliated mystics, who are living an involuntary life that's just sourced by God. And it's focused on God and on divine love. And I think for myself it was interesting too, because where I was dissatisfied with many things in the world and quite dissatisfied with my experiences on planet Earth, I had my revelatory experiences after the Course came into my life. So it's interesting that the Course came into my life in 1986 in the Parable of David, and then several years later, after I prayed and read the book for about over 8 hours a day on the average, and just got into this deep devotion with the Course that I had a series of revelatory experiences where the world went from three-dimensional down to two-dimensional, and then it just, this light, not of this world, Jesus calls it the great rays, just started streaming through the perception, and then it overtook the perception entirely, and there was only light. The world literally disappeared for me in the parable of David 3 times. And I was just immersed in this unspeakable light that sometimes people would even talk about on near-death experiences, when they are drawn to the light, and when they go into the light, then it's unspeakable. Words fail. You get a glimpse of heaven. You get a full-on direct experience of light and of God. And they're called revelations because they're temporary by nature. If you disappeared into the revelation, you wouldn't have a word, revelation. You wouldn't need a word for it, because there is nothing but love and nothing but God. So there goes the ego again. What's revelation? Well, who's asking? God says, who wants to know? So for me, coming to the Course, when I encountered the Course, it was a very deep experience. I think it was the same for you, Svava. You got it, but you were even guided to read it in English, which is like your third language. You had Icelandic and Dutch.
No, Danish.
Or Danish.
Yeah.
And then you were guided when you didn't understand English that well, but that was again Jesus maybe preparing you for what was to come, because you had to use a dictionary to look the words up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had school English.
English.
Yeah, but there was so many words I didn't understand, so I had Google Translate, and my book is like some in Icelandic, some Danish, is just all translated. Yeah.
So if we go back to what I was sharing about that there is no answer to the questions that the ego asks, because the ego is the questioning aspect of the mind. The Holy Spirit is not the questioning aspect. That's the comforter. That's all the Holy Spirit does, is provide comfort and can give the words when there's an instruction or something that would be helpful. But the ego is the questioning aspect of the mind. And therefore, Jesus is telling us that only an experience will come to end your doubting. And when he says experience there in the Manual for Teachers, it's not plural. He doesn't say experiences will come to end your doubting. He says there is an experience that will come to end your doubting. So that means it's singular. It's not multiple, it's not plural. And some of you may know that there was a psychologist I refer to a lot, dear to my heart. I always talk a lot about Carl Rogers and his therapy of non-directed psychotherapy. But Abraham Maslow was the one who came up with the pyramid, the hierarchy of needs. And you might remember at the top of Maslow's hierarchy was self-actualization. That's it. Know thyself. The Greeks talked about it, Jesus talks about it, the ancient mystics in India and China have all talked about self-realization. He called it self-actualization, discovering your actual self. And the people that seem to be experiencing a lot of experiences at the top of his pyramid were the highest, most integrist, wonderful people that he ever found. He studied people that had been passed away for generations. He studied people that were still alive when he was alive. But what he described was peak experiences. And he said it's like when an artist is so in the moment, in the zone, that they lose track of the act of creating the art. They merge with everything, and they are unaware of the world in that moment. It's a peak experience. He described it with athletes who get into the zone. They have a peak experience where everything merges together, and there's no sense of competition, there's no sense of what do I do next. It's just a total merge with what is. And we know musicians, maybe they're singers, opera singers, or singers, or people that play instruments in the symphony, and they'll talk about being in the middle of the symphony or the recital, and then suddenly they just merge with everything. There's not a person playing the instrument or a person singing anymore. So these are what Maslow called peak experiences, and I'm sure all of us have had peak experiences. I think a number of us have had a lot of peak experiences, but that's not really what mysticism is about, because Jesus is telling us there is an experience, singular, that will end your doubting. Also, the workbook lesson for today is basically Jesus teaching there aren't different kinds of love. You may be accustomed to thinking that there's different kinds of love, and he assures you the love of God is the only love that there is. There are not different kinds of love. So when we talk about experiences in terms of the world of time and space, it's plural. And what Jesus is basically teaching us in the Course is, when you seem to come to this world of time and space, you come without a self and you make one as you go along. And it's almost like you get a ticket to the world, and once you get to experience the world, it's almost like your ticket is good for many, many experiences. It's almost like you've got a ticket and the currency is time, and you can use that currency for as many different experiences as you want on planet Earth, and they're all ego experiences. All of them. The currency, this card that you've been given before you come to spend on time and experiences, God didn't create the card, God didn't create the world, and God didn't create any of those experiences. But the peak experience gives you a glimpse of something that is not of this world. It is of the light. It is of the source. It is of our true Christ self. And that's why they feel so wonderful. Every time I had them when I was golfing. Sometimes I'd be out there and I would feel like I was disappearing, and then there would be this little whoosh of a golf club and a perfect little click, and the ball would just go so high and straight, and I was just gone. I was gone. I was unaware of the golf course and the golf ball. I had it when I was playing basketball too. Sometimes I'd be just in the flow and the rhythm of the basketball game, and then zoom. There was no basketball game anymore. I was just in one of those peak experiences. So today what I'd like to do is I'd like to take you with me on a journey. Svava and I will be your guides into an experience that is not of this world. That's kind of fun, isn't it? A session, you think you just signed up for an online weekend session and you got more than you imagined. We're going to take you on a ride, seeming ride. Okay, here's where we start. Jesus tells us in the Course that miracles are involuntary and should not be under conscious control. I'll say it again. Miracles are involuntary and should not be under conscious control. So even though he has 50 miracle principles at the beginning of the book, he doesn't want you to learn the miracle as a concept. He wants you to be willing to yield your mind into his direction and his control. That's right. He wants you to disappear and give up the reins of what seems to be conscious control of your life. Now, that's important because when we come to planet Earth and we start listening to the ego and we have all these questions, even 10-year-old Svava was concerned about her cat. And then when Grandma and the cat appeared and then they disappeared, she asked the question, can I die? You see, it was a pretty profound question for a 10-year-old. Can I die? And then, boom, an experience came as an answer to that question. You see, it wasn't Jesus coming and sitting in front of her and say, now I'm going to give you an intellectual answer to your question, can I die? It was whoom, it was whoa. It was an experience that was not of this world, that came upon a very sincere request of a 10-year-old girl who was very, very sad prior to that and who really desperately needed to know the answer to can I die? Now, when I say miracles should not be under conscious control, when you look at your earth life and you look at your human life, it seems like many things are under your conscious control. The temperature that you keep your house at with your thermostat, you're thinking, I want to keep it just right. I have a temperature that I like, and I'm going to be controlling that thermostat. You may control when your pets go in and out of the door. You may seem to control what you do during the day. You believe you do. Okay, here's my to-do list for today. I've got to do this, 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 this. But see, that's all under conscious control. And miracles should not be under conscious control. So somehow, in order to enter into this mystical experience, you're going to have to suspend your desire to be in conscious control of your body and your life. Are you willing to do that with me tonight? It's a willingness. You have to really be willing to say, I am not going to try to control how to get into this experience, Jesus, because you know the way and I don't. If I knew the way, why would I be struggling with time and space every day? With all these challenges and problems. If I really could go into the mystic, then why would I be messing around with problems every day? So, I want to give you a bit of a setup with this because I want to bring it back to you. A lot of you are working with A Course in Miracles and you read the book, you study it, you do the daily lessons. Some of you have said you've been doing this for years, since I think, was it Linda? You said like 1980 something. It was pretty long. You've been at it for some decades. And so you read the book, you do the lessons, and as best you can, you pray, and you open up and ask to be guided. That's pretty typical for a Course in Miracles student. That's what you're asked to do. And to give you a little perspective, the Course in Miracles came on my path and it came into my hands in 1986, and then when it came, it was like a mystical peak experience when the book landed in my hand. It felt like a tsunami of love washing over me, and the feeling was nothing will ever be the same as it was. Like something entirely new was coming. And I didn't know what that was, but I could really feel that the trajectory that I thought was the life of David was going in a whole different direction than anything I had ever imagined. And that's part of what you have to do when you really open to miracles. You have to literally place the future in the hands of God. And you have to literally say, I don't know. I don't know what will serve in the best way. And that's how the workbook lessons end. This holy instant would I give to you, be you in charge, for I would but follow. That's the end. That's how the workbook lessons end. So if you want to go into mysticism and you want to go into that experience, you have to suspend that mechanism of the mind that thinks it knows something about the future. In fact, you also have to suspend the aspect that thinks it knows something about the past. That's what Francis and Kirsten were talking about today, where it was come back and start anew, start fresh in this moment with the Holy Spirit. That's the key. So, for those of you who have studied the Course, you're very familiar with the Course. And then after about 4 years of really deep devotion with the Course, things started to get very, very surreal for me. I mean, the whole world started to look very surreal. My cat looks surreal. My cat Mo, which was named after Mohandas K. Gandhi. Everything looked surreal, and I started to have these out-of-pattern experiences every day. And I had lots of them during the day. I would get guided. One time I was guided to go to a garage sale, a yard sale, and on the way to the yard sale, my car started to sputter and sputter. And as I got to the yard sale, it sputtered and died in front of the house where the yard sale was. So I observed it and I went, well, that's interesting. And I got out of the car and I went to the yard sale and I met these people, a whole family was there, and they all were looking at me and they all started laughing and pointing to me and say, where do we know him from? We know him. I never met the family before in my life, but they all were convinced that they knew me. Where do we know him from? They were trying to pinpoint it. There was this huge feeling of familiarity, but they had no recollection of why they had that feeling. So as I always do, I have a lot of fun with people, laughing with them, joking with them. It's a yard sale. And so at the end of my little time there, I'm out of, again, I don't feel like this is David in control of it at all. It's just like I'm watching a surreal scene, and at the end the son said, oh, do you need a car? And I said, what? And he said, I have a car for sale in the garage, and for $100. And I said, what? I said, well, actually, my car just died in front of your house. And he said, really, it did? Well, he said, this car needs a starter, but if you want a car for $100, it's yours. It was like a little Chevy, a small, compact Chevy. And I said, well, will it run? He said, no, it needs a starter, but if you get in, my family, this family that thinks they know me, will push you down the street to a mechanic's place, and for maybe $120, $150, you can have a starter installed. He said, it's a good car. All it needs is a starter. We'll push you down the street. So I get in this car, and I'm driving a car with the whole family pushing me down. They put a starter in, and it's a decent car. Then Jesus is telling me you're going to visit Ken and Gloria Wapnick, who I'd never met, in the Catskill Mountains. So off I go in my little car, and I did discover that the defrost was not really working, and it was winter. So when I got up into the Catskill Mountains, I had, my breath was coming out on the inside of the windshield, and I was using the scraper to scrape the inside because my breath was steaming and freezing up the inside. So this is the kind of life you have when you start to have things get real surreal. You find yourself in the Catskill Mountains in a $100 garage sale car, and you're scraping the inside of a windshield. So when I got there, the whole trip went so fast, it was like a time collapse. I couldn't even believe how fast I got there. In fact, when I got there, I thought, I don't even know what time it is here. And I had arrived like a day earlier than I planned to arrive. And Ken was in the middle of a group from Oklahoma and Texas. He was doing a workshop. But I just parked my little car, walked right in, and walked right into the lecture that Ken was giving. And he stopped and he smiled and looked at me, and he continued on teaching. And I just kind of sat down and enjoyed the rest of the lecture. Then, after the lecture ended, Ken himself came up to me and he said, "Wow, are you supposed to be here?" I said, "Yeah, I think I had a miracle time collapse. I think I got here a day early." I don't know how it happened, but I think maybe I'm early, because I don't know that I signed up for this workshop, but I think I'm part of the one that starts tomorrow. He said, "Well, let me get you a key. Let me get you situated. Why don't you go in the cafeteria and meet all the people?" And so I went into the cafeteria, and he got the key and everything I needed. And all these people from Texas and Oklahoma were, "Hi, how are you doing? What's your name?" and hugging me. I didn't know any of them. There was, I don't know, maybe 80, 100 people, the most friendly people from the South I'd ever met. They're all hugging me. But this is what I mean. This is just, it's all surreal. It's all surreal. It's not under conscious control. It's almost like I'm being carried along, and I'm just enjoying all the holy encounters, but I'm not in control of this. And I had actually gone through an experience where I gave up conscious control of my future. I basically gave it to Jesus. I said, "Take my future, take my possessions, you take everything. Let it all be used for the glory of God, because I need help. And I think me giving you and putting you in charge of absolutely everything is what I need to do. I need to say yes to be used as a miracle worker, even though I don't know what that is." And I never planned on it in my childhood or even adult life. I mean, if I had told my parents that I was going to be a miracle worker, they might have just laughed, just laughed me right out of the kitchen table if I'd have said, "I think my life is to be a miracle worker." So the reason I'm telling you this is because once I was there, then I was in a mystical state, and people there at Roscoe were basically there for a workshop, a seminar, or they were translators that Ken was working with to translate the course into different languages. And the more I stayed there, and the more I visited, it was so mystical that I met people and they would say things to me like, "I saw you in a dream, I have to take you out for dinner, and I have to ask you some questions." And I'd say, "Okay." Then we'd go out. "My husband passed away. Where is my husband now? Can you communicate with him? I want to know that he's safe." I mean, there were so many mystical experiences I had at Roscoe, up in the Catskill Mountains. And mind you, this is 1990. For you who are course students, the disappearance of the universe didn't come out until 2003. So I've gone into this deep connection with Jesus, and it's 1990, and I'm up in the Catskill Mountains in a $100 garage sale car. And that's just the beginning. Believe me, if I could tell you the way it's just gone more and more of the same. But the key characteristics is that I feel I am not under conscious control of my life. I am not under conscious control of my body. I am not under conscious control of time and space. And Jesus has told us in the Course that if you're willing to work miracles and you're willing to be used by Jesus in this plan, that will save time. And that will bring about the experience of revelation. Jesus says, under my control, my direction of miracles will bring you into the experience of revelation. And that's what happened to me in the early days, the very first years with the Course in Miracles. Somehow I was so willing that I started having lots of miracles every day, and then I would have these disappearance of the universe experience where they were revelatory experiences, and there was a sense of clarity and certainty and peace like I had never known in experiencing the light directly. Now, that's important because I want you to stop for a minute and really go inside your heart and say, can I do this with Jesus? Am I willing to hand over everything that I perceive and say, be you in charge? That's actually at the end of the workbook, but I would imagine many of you have gone through it. Some of you have said you're only with the Course for a few months, so of course you haven't gone through the workbook, but it doesn't matter. Even if you haven't gone through the workbook, even if you are just in it for a few months and you feel it in your heart, you can do this. You can actually put your entire mind over to Jesus. And when we say this, it's kind of like a surrender moment where you just are saying, I give you a yes and I trust you. That's really what it is. I give you a yes, Jesus, and I trust you. And in doing this, you have put your mind in a position, so to speak, to experience the miracles. You don't learn them conceptually, even though Helen Schuckman, who's the scribe of the Course, said, at last a pathway to God for intellectuals. When you actually work with this book, you start to realize it's not really a book. It's far more than a book. This is, that's what I felt from the beginning. When I opened it up, I was like, whoa, this is like no book I've ever picked up. Immediately when I picked up the Course, I felt like the author was not in time and space. That's what I felt like. I felt this intuition like, this author is not in time and space. I said to myself as I flipped through the pages, And then you start to open yourself up to the experience of the miracle. Because the miracle is not conceptual. You can talk about it in terms of the past or the future, but the miracle is your willingness to align with the Holy Spirit right now. And if you become so consistent at that alignment, then you will have revelatory experience, which is basically the holy instant. So Svava we were talking some time ago, and maybe within the last year or two, and she had a look on her face and she said, I'm hearing that the rest of my life I'm only to teach one thing. And I said, what is that one thing? And she said, the holy instant. So maybe you can share a little bit about how it's gone from that point on, when you heard you are here to teach only one thing, and that is the holy instant.
Yeah, I was kind of like discussing it with Jesus. I said, you can't teach the holy instant, that's impossible. And then I was just praying about it. You have to show me how to do this. And about a year ago, I started hearing that I was to make meditation music. And my first thought was like, okay, maybe I'm to make meditation music to put under David's talks, or David could do it. I can make the music and David will do it. I couldn't imagine that I would speak or say anything. And then suddenly, I think it was recently, maybe a month and a half ago, I heard that I was to make a meditation podcast. So all the music that I had been feeling and started doing, I started doing this podcast, and I basically do the music, and I go into my closet, and then I just pray, and then everything comes out. And I was hearing that the only way to teach the holy instant is it's an experience. It's only an experience. You cannot. It's because it's far beyond words. It's out of this world. So I'm just slowly feeling it out and doing this podcast and receiving music, and so we'll see. I don't know. I'm not in control. It's just like these inspirations that come over me, and then okay, I just say yes, and I'm willing, even though it's frightening and everything. Like coming here today, I don't really do this. I sing a song sometimes. Yeah. So holy instant.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's basically everything. There is nothing else. So, Yeah,
Jesus says you can't enter the holy instant without preparing for it and placing it in the future, and that's not it. So that means all of our human means that we're accustomed to are of no value at all to reach the holy instant. You can't plan for it, because when you try to plan or prepare for it, you're placing it in the future, and it's not. So he says you can experience it by desiring it. So when I say willingness, Jesus puts a lot on that word will and willing. He says, instead of seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, which is in the Bible, he says, will ye the kingdom of heaven. That's how strong he is in the Course. Will ye the kingdom of heaven. He says, in terms of the Bible, it was written, the kingdom of heaven is within. He comes in strong. The word within is unnecessary. You are the kingdom of heaven. He takes the within. He's editing the Bible. Of course, Jesus can get away with this. If you and I tried, it would be bloody hell. But Jesus is editing the Bible. He's saying, now, let's go for this here. Let's go for this experience. Will ye the kingdom of heaven. So, what is that willingness? Well, that's our part, in the sense that we take our willingness and combine it with the might and the strength and power of the Holy Spirit. Our little willingness combined with the power of the Holy Spirit ignites the experience. So it's like a little candlestick, and a match. And our part is to light the match and bring it in to the candle, which will burn for a long time, much longer than the match. It's very, very, very powerful. So, as you're going to do this, you start to realize how important it is. I mean, at some point, after about 4 or 5 years of dedication with the Course, I'd gone to Roscoe, I had 3 revelatory experiences, I was having very surreal, very miraculous days, and that's after the first 5 years. And I'm like, wow, I really, these are very strong, Jesus. These are very convincing for me. They are really convincing me of that you can, under your direction, anything is possible, was what I was feeling. And so around 1991, I was feeling like, I feel like I'm kind of becoming a mystic. And Jesus just laughed so hard. He just was like, oh, you have a few miracles, and now you're a mystic. He's like, oh no. In fact, I think all the angels, there was thousands, tens of thousands of angels, and they all were laughing at the same time when I said, I think I'm a mystic, and I think I'm ready to go, point me to a mountain where I can ascend. That set off a chain of laughter. Like, no, you're at the beginning. You're at the beginning, you're not at the end, you're just at the beginning. So what came next? Well, more of the same, in the sense that, miracles are involuntary and should not be under conscious control. But as David, I had a habitual addiction to using the past to plan my days. It was very deep addiction. That's why they were all laughing when I said I'm a mystic. It was like, you wish. You're at the beginning phase. You're not at the end. So then Jesus said we're going traveling, and that's when Jesus took me on a road trip. He didn't tell me it would be 5 years out on the road. Basically, he just said, get in the car and drive west. Basically, that's how Jesus works. He doesn't really tell you much. He just says, get in the car, drive west. He actually guided me to get the car, which was a miracle too. It was another little car at that point. The other car, that was the $100 garage sale car, it was kind of a bit rusty. In fact, the passenger seat, the floor, had completely rusted through. So one time, my dad said, can you give me a ride? And I invited him into my $100 car, and he put his feet on the sides. So he said, what is this, a Flintstone car? We have to put our feet down and get like the Flintstones, like Fred Flintstone. I'm saying, just put your feet on the side there. Don't stick them down the bottom. It's a $100 car. It was a miracle. So anyway, Jesus guided me to get another little car. It was a little gold car, and it was great on gas mileage. I think that thing could run on fumes. And I guess he was getting me ready for these 5 years of travel. But what I'm saying is, when I took off, I didn't know how long I'd be traveling or exactly where I'd be going. But Jesus always knows. He's in charge. He handled how I would get food. He handled how I would get gas money. He handled the places I would stay, the people I would meet. He basically handled everything. Now remember, this is 1991. I keep using Disappearance of the Universe because it's kind of like a benchmark for people, because they always go, oh, I remember when the Disappearance of the Universe came out. That was 2003, and I'm back in 1991. And Jesus has taken me on a drive-about around the United States and Canada. So this is the experiential learning the miracle. This is not about, like Disappearance of the Universe, it's Artin and Persa doing Q&A with Gary. And Gary he's up in Maine, he's got Artin and Persa on a couch up in Maine, and he started about a year later than this. In 1992, I think, is when Artin and Persa first appeared to Gary, and then the book didn't come out until 2003. But this wasn't so much Q&A with Jesus as it was Jesus giving me instructions and me saying, really? He's like, yes, 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 follow. You said you'd follow, so here it is. Here's the instructions. So that put me into an experience of the miracle where my life is not my own. Once you are under the direction of Jesus and the Holy Spirit, you have a very strong feeling that my life is not my own. This puppet called David is now not under the conscious control of David. Yes, from time to time that will come back, but Jesus said, yeah, if that didn't come back, then you could go to the mountain and ascend. But that's why you will now become a traveling, you may aspire, a traveling, aspiring mystic. Is what I was. A traveling, aspiring mystic. And that began a whole phase where I just was used by the Spirit to let the voice for God speak through me and just experience that everything is completely taken care of and that I don't have to take care of anything, that everything is provided in the guidance of the Holy Spirit and Jesus. So that phase went on for about 5 years. Then I was guided to this peace house, which was another miracle, because I didn't have the money to buy a house, but Jesus arranged that too, and there was a lot more travel. That was like a base in launching to a lot of travel. And then finally, when The Disappearance of the Universe came out in 2003, Jesus launched me on world travels. He was taking me down that very same year when the book was published. He was taking me down to Argentina to do 19 consecutive gatherings on 19 consecutive days. And I didn't speak Spanish. I didn't speak hardly anything. I mean, I knew how to say I love you, te amo. And I knew...
Now you know.
Hola.
Nada.
Now I know nada. Now I know nada, nada, nada. You see, my vocabulary has expanded greatly since 2003. But when I went down there, my friend Resta said, you're going to have a big problem when you get down there to Argentina. I said, what? How could there be a problem? And she said, you don't speak Spanish, and they do. That was Resta's simple analysis of my language problem I was going to have. But Jesus brought in 14 excellent translators. He arranged the translators too. So what I mean, you don't have to handle anything. It's all under the Spirit's direction. So that just brings us up to the publishing of The Disappearance of the Universe. There's been a lot that's happened between 2003 and 2021. Too much to share in this in this retreat. I mean, it's surrendering to the devotion of that experience, where you realize that the experience of this oneness, this connection, this joy, this happiness, this peace, this laughter, this experience, you start to realize is the only experience that there is. So ego doesn't like that one. It's the only one. That's why mysticism is a devotion to God, because it's the only actual experience that you can have. The others are various flavors of nothing. But the Spirit uses it until you strengthen that desire. Let thine eye be single. As you go with it and you give yourself over to that, then you start to feel the all-encompassing nature of this experience. Because the world you perceive is based on what you experience in your mind. And Jesus tells us if you want only love, you will see nothing else. That's a workbook lesson Svava was talking about today. I think it was referred to. God is in everything I see. Yeah. So it's worth it. That's what we're basically saying. It's more than worth it. It's the only experience.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable, and it's the only experience there is. But it's not a belief in the worldly sense of beliefs. I think with many people, they will say, what do you believe? Do you believe in God or not? And what are your beliefs about God? And what religion are you? What philosophy do you subscribe to? And this experience goes like the sun. It's so bright that all those other seeming questions just vanish in the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just thinking about this morning, I was hearing, anything you cannot take with you when you lay aside the body has no value whatsoever. And I was like, wow. And then it came back and I was writing it down and reading it over and over and over. And then it was like, oh wow, only what I can take with me is who I am. So I went into this experience of I am. Yeah, it was just very deep. Yeah.
So I think you start to see it's not so much that you have to struggle or strive or fight, but it's more that you have to lay down the fight. You have to lay down the struggle. Cast your cares upon him, for he careth for you. Lay down your burdens. And when he's talking burdens, he's talking about thoughts of the past and future. Those are the burdens that preoccupy a sleeping mind, the past and the future. And the conditioning of the ego can seem strong, but as soon as you're willing to be shown another way, then the miracles just come like cascading, like a waterfall of cascading water. That's how it felt for me. It was like there was cascading miracles every day, rinsing my mind, showing me the way. Very practical, like all my perceived needs were met in these miracles. But I have to say that to me, the miracle is a time collapse. I know a lot of people like to define the miracle as a shift in perception, and there's a lot of common conceptual, like you might say, definitions of a miracle, but experientially, for me, it felt like some kind of a surreal time collapse where all there was blessings. Like everyone that I was perceiving from that state of mind was blessed. It was all blessing, nothing but blessing. And then it does eliminate what we could call suffering. I saw the first session and Esther, are you there, Esther? Esther, maybe, I don't know if she's here or she's gone to sleep, but Esther was asking me about something I had said about there you are. Esther was asking about, miracles are he doesn't ever call them retroactive miracles. But he does say that the miracle is a correction that applies retroactively and progressively. Okay, the miracle itself is the moment, but when you're in the miracle, you collapse the alpha and the omega. You collapse the beginning and the end. You collapse time in such a way that you are bringing an end to suffering for yourself and for everyone in the miracle. So the miracle is the end of suffering. And when you're in it, you can actually feel it, like you're in such joy and happiness and love that you intuitively know, yes, this is the end of suffering. But suffering seems to be projected out into time. The ego always has projected the whole world of time and space to cover itself, to hide itself. And therefore, when you experience miracles, you do feel this time collapse. And miracles are always showing you the power of this moment. We can talk about them in past tense, and we can talk about them in future tense, but they're just right now, and they correct retroactively and progressively. You can check that if you guys want to go check it out. I think it's in chapter 2. If anybody's like, oh my God, I gotta find that. It's in chapter 2. So we're just trying to offer tonight just some experiences that can increase your motivation for opening your heart to these miracles. Because miracles are the answer for everything. That's why it's called A Course in Miracles. It's literally the most effective way to reach joy, to reach peace, to reach happiness. And I'd say you feel this surrendered notion. I mean, I think for Svava and I, every day is an adventure, but it's a very kind of single-pointed adventure, because it's not so much about the specifics, or not so much about planning anything, because there's no sense of that in the instant.
No. No, we wake up and pretty clueless. It's going to happen. But yeah, the peace of mind is the only goal. So whatever happens, it's just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Joyful, happy.
Yeah. And the funny thing was, some of you have written in prayers, and some of you have written in questions, and I checked in with Svava a few hours ago, and Svava was saying, oh, look at this. The one that stood out was a prayer.
Oh, yeah.
You want to read that prayer?
Read it. Yeah. It's beautiful. From Joe Karash. Do you say Karash? In Canada. My prayer for this weekend is to fully experience the peace and love of God and deepen my ability to remain in the present moment, fully guided and extending the love that I am. Yeah. Such a beautiful prayer. Yeah, I'll join you in that. I think everyone will join in that. Yeah.
The reason I think the prayer is so important is that everything comes from it. And I mean absolutely everything comes from prayer. So in the past, I thought I could fall back on past learning. I was mistaken. I thought that I had learned some techniques and some devices and some means that would help me with survival. And Jesus said, survival? Is that what you think this is about? Survival? And at the beginning I said, well, yeah, I still think it's kind of important. And he said, well, that's why we have to go on a road trip, because you're so bent on survival. And of course, I think I was in my 30s, so that's a time typically where you're supposed to be solving that equation to some extent. And he was like saying, well, if you follow me, you won't be putting thoughts and considerations in that direction. That is why prayer is so important. Prayer is the medium of miracles, and of course many of us grew up with various prayers that we would pray, either repetitious prayers or prayers we would say at meals or prayers for specifics. We were all somewhat familiar with those kind of prayers, but Jesus was saying, I want you to get in touch with the power of prayer. My cat,
our cat is
our
here.
mystic cat, is now Iso is making himself known. Oh, he said, "You're doing Life of Mysticism?" Yeah, well, I need something right now. So Susan's gone to... We've got a mystic cat. But everything starts with the prayer, because what Jesus is teaching us is everything that you perceive is a thought. Everything, without exception, that you perceive in time and space is just a thought in your mind. And that's why Jesus has to work with our thinking, and he has to work with our beliefs. And he will do that by using our emotions as well to get in touch with those thoughts and those beliefs. But for me, those 5 years of being out on the road were so important because that was showing me what I believed. Whenever I got stressed, whenever I felt fear, whenever I felt helpless or powerless, whatever the emotion was, Jesus would use that opportunity to have me take a look at my beliefs. And he basically was saying that if I honestly was going to give all my mind over to him, then I had to be willing to give over my thoughts and my emotions, my beliefs, actually give over my interpretation of my whole perception to be used in a state of healing and purification. That's basically what it came down to. And everything started to happen very rapidly, so that was helpful too, because I had to loosen up from this idea of trying to interpret what was happening based on the past, and come back, take a deep breath, and again ask to be shown, pray to be shown. So I don't think I had ever had such intensive training in prayer. I know I didn't really know that much about prayer when I was a child or a teenager, and when I was in university for 10 years, that was not one of my subjects. I never took a class at the University of Cincinnati on prayer. If I'd have gone there and asked them, they probably would have looked at me and they say, there's a Catholic university called Xavier University. Maybe you should go to Xavier University instead of the University of Cincinnati. And even that, it's hard to get a class on prayer that's really deep, unless Jesus is the instructor in your mind. Then it's deep. That's deep, deep, deep. So the reason I'm sharing these experiences is I just want you to get a little taste of what I mean by miracles are involuntary and should not be under conscious control. If you are really feeling like this is your life calling to go into mysticism, to go into a deep devotion to God and divine love, then this, I think, is a very important point to really be honest with yourself about. Am I willing to give up conscious control of my day and my future? That's a real good question right there. Much of the metaphysics of the Course, it's so radical. I mean, it's so completely radical that I think that's what Art and Persa were attempting to do in Disappearance of the Universe. They were attempting to allow Gary to ask all of his questions so that they could give these radical metaphysics and teachings from the Course, and then when Gary would have follow-up questions, they would give even more examples to try to make it clear. What this is, this back and forth, this Q&A with Ascended Masters or Q&A with Jesus, that's just helping you get loosened up for the miracle. That's just loosening your mind up for the willingness to say, perform miracles through me. Use me, use my mind as a miracle worker. Use the puppet as part of the miracle working, as a communication device. But there is no such thing as intellectual understanding. If you think you can just read the Course or read Disappearance of the Universe and say, intellectually, I get what A Course in Miracles is saying, you aren't going to get that, because there is no such thing as intellectual understanding. I don't want to pop too many bubbles tonight, but that's a bubble that Jesus wants to put a needle in. Because I've gone to thousands of course groups around the world, and that's one of the things I hear the most. I get it intellectually, but no, there is no such thing as intellectual understanding. In fact, it's much more helpful to come to the Course with the experience of, and the state of mind of, I don't understand. It's much, you're going to go faster in the miracle if you come with, I don't understand. In fact, that's one of the early workbook lessons. Mm-hmm. I do not understand.
Do not know the thing I am.
Yeah,
where I'm going.
That's in the text. I do not know the thing I am, what I'm doing, where I'm going, or how to look upon myself or the world. That's salvation. But in the early workbook lessons, I do not know what anything is for, including this. He actually, as you go around, you think, it's a picture of Mom. No, you don't know what, your mind's trying to, carpet. No, I do not know what anything is for. He's trying to help you let go of the past by saying all that you perceive is the past, and basically you think you know what it is, but you don't know. And you think that you understand certain aspects of the human condition, but he says, I remind you, you do not. He says that in the workbook. In no situation do you perceive your own best interest. He doesn't say in most situations you don't perceive your own best interest. He says in no situation do you perceive your own best interest. That's what Kirsten was talking about today. As soon as you think you understand something of the Course, you have a little bit of a spiritual identity or spiritual ego, some people say, even though it's kind of just a construct, and Jesus is like, no, you will not understand anything until you pass the test of perfect peace, he says. And he basically is telling us that understanding doesn't come before this experience that you're seeking. Understanding comes with the experience of mysticism, of atonement, of awakening. Its understanding comes in the experience of love. Isn't that sound intuitively right? That if love is everything, and God is everything, then until you have that experience of divine love or of God, then you don't understand anything. So it's not like you work your way up with progressively more and more understanding. It's like different versions of zero. Zero. I'm maturing in zero. I am progressively advancing in zero. You could say right now, and it would be the most honest thing is, I know nothing. That's now we're getting to honesty. That's honesty. I know nothing. But an open mind can be shown the truth. If the mind is so humble and so open to say, I know nothing, then you're open to the truth. In fact, I find now, when people ask me like specific questions about the world, I just tell them straight out, I don't know. I feel that's my honest answer. When they ask me something specific about whatever, the gross national product or what the government of something is or this or that, I don't know. Am I getting good at shrugging my shoulders? I don't know. It's an honest answer. I love it. And I like being happy more than trying to know something about this world. We like to be more clueless than anything else. You should see the look in Iso's eyes sometimes. He's over there. He can give you the most clueless look. In fact, some of you, this is probably the only time it's appropriate to share it. I might have done it before, but there was a time where Iso was in our pantry room, and was it you and Lisa went in, and above the pantry there's some shelves with some towels and things like this, and Lisa and Svava went into the pantry and they went up, and Iso was in a samadhi experience, like Yogananda at the end of his life. The cat he was gone from his body. He was just this little sphinx statue. It looked like a statue with kind of glass eyes just peering out. And I think, didn't Lisa say, what's wrong with the cat or something? What's going on? Because he was gone. It was totally samadhi. Now, that's another symbol that this is your lifetime for mysticism. If your cat goes into samadhi, then that's a clue. That's just a little clue if your cat goes into samadhi. Well, what do you think? Do you think we should
open up? Maybe.
We've shared our heart for tonight, but why don't we have, if you want to raise your digital hand or just wave or whatever you want to do, we've got some time here to open it wide up and have some beautiful interactions with you.
We just put in the chat how people can raise their digital hand. And see, we could start with Portia. You could unmute there.
Thank you, guys. This has been amazing. Ever since you started talking about your early situations, so I've the way that I came to the Course and what has transpired in the last maybe 4 or 5 years is this amazing recognition of almost exactly what you've said. When I read the Course, I couldn't tell you what I was reading. I couldn't conceptualize some statement about the new philosophy that I was going to adhere to with a set of standards and beliefs and ways of perceiving the world and who God is, all the details. All I knew is that I was not the same and that I was blissed out to the max. And all I wanted to do was be with that Course because I was transported in experience. And so I kept it to myself for a year. And then when I started to attend groups or even people up at Camas, when I would hear people talk, but mostly Course groups, they would say something like, well, the world's a dream. And I'd say, what? I had no idea what I had just been completely changed by. All I knew was the holy instant. And even now I read the Course and I say, that's what it said. And I don't actually have this thought that it might not be true, because it was such an overwhelmingly gigantic experience, and fairly consistent with some early childhood revelatory feelings and experiences, that I kind of giggled that I think it might be important to know what the Course says. You know, like the way of learning. Here's the past that I'm currently finding to let go of. The past for a gifted intellect such as I knew how to study, read, put into practice, talk about, teach, counsel. The one now that tries to do that with course materials just gets tongue-tied. It never, I can't engage the intellect and teach this, but I know how to open, go blank, and be spoken through. And it is such a delight.
That's fantastic.
It's so easy, isn't it? It's so much more like normal and bliss that I just love. And I don't even need to call myself a mystic because I'm loaded with blocks to the awareness of that. But when I'm in it, man, I'm just like floating. I just love it. So thanks for this this topic. I totally get where we're all coming from.
Thanks, Portia.
Thank you.
And I think Greg told me that you had like maybe 5 or 6 Mormon friends now that have curiosity about the Course. So you see how Jesus is so good. He if you just want to go blank and be spoken through, and he's like, well, that's good. I know the ones that you can do that with, and there it is. That's what mysticism is about. It's like being under Jesus's direction, so that the guidance can lead to the revelatory experience, which is the direct experience of God. So how beautiful. I celebrate with you that you're just allowing yourself to go blank and be spoken through without trying to plan like a professor would. What's your syllabus say, and what do your notes say? Jesus doesn't work that way. He says, no, I'll do it through you if you're willing, but don't try to pre-plan my miracles, because I'll do the miracles through you. And you're in a good position for that. Sounds like you're in a very willing position for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Portia.
Okay. Just a reminder too, you will be translated, so please speak slowly for our translators. Adriano, you can go next.
Hi, David.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Svava.
Hi.
I think, and I got this feeling that we all want to be led by the Spirit, or that to be led. You know? But what it came to my mind was it biggest fear to be manipulated from people or organization or government. And of course, I was thinking about it during your lecture, what you're talking about. And of course, when I look for this guide outside, it's very easy to be misconducted or misused. And in the past, I was very afraid of to hear my inner voice, because I couldn't separate what's good or bad, what's from ego or from the spirit. Now I can trust better this inner voice myself, but I think for most of people this fear to let go, because yeah, maybe because we lose ourselves, this concept of ourselves, identity. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Adriana.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's the ego wants to protect itself, so it projects the fear from the mind onto people and circumstances and situations, and that's like the default program of the world. So what you're describing, it does take time to start to feel out and discern what you're hearing inside. And that's beautiful that you shared that, because that is how it goes for all of us. We slowly start to let go of putting so much meaning and looking to the form to guide us. And we slowly start to let our intuitive self, our real self, guide us in ways that we can really connect with and feel. So thank you for your witness. That's what it's all about. Thank you.
Okay, well, next we can go to Linda Leslie. You can unmute.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you. And thank you for the journey this evening. David, I so appreciate going on my own spiritual journey tonight, hearing some of yours, because it was in 1986 that I was introduced to A Course in Miracles. And I must have been ready to hear the message, because I was looking at a bulletin board and there was a message on it that said, if you're ready to give up being a victim, call me. And I called the number, and it turned out to be Igor Sikorsky, who was a study of the Course. And he invited me to a gathering of people who shared this interest, and eventually I did get to go meet Ken and Gloria up at Roscoe, and it's been a journey of so many years now, but not. I haven't pursued that life of a mystic because I guess I was too distracted by this world, and so I was so taken by your description of giving up a struggle, because somehow I hear people talking about meditation now, and now they fight to meditate, and it just seems like such a strange thing to me, because if you're going, I mean, it's a letting go. It's not, there's not a struggle involved. It's more of it is that surrender that you were talking about. And so I feel as though I've had this wonderful journey tonight, my own spiritual awakening, and you've been such a part of it. And it ends in the moment, as we were all. I was saying to a friend of mine the other day, the moment is this moment is the holiest place on earth, just right now, and that it is. And the other thing, I'm here, but I have this quote by someone named J.C. Watt, and I believe he's a politician, but he said, if I hope I don't misquote him, but he said something like, people think there's great strength in hanging on, and really the greatest strength is in letting go. And that's where I am with tonight, and I'm so glad to be on this journey with you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you,
Thank
Linda.
you.
Thank you. How sweet. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Maybe we could go to Esther next.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. When you talked about no retroactive miracles, my understanding of it was that like it's like a form of conceptual thinking, that you're looking back at something that happened in the past or something that's going to happen in the future, and you're trying to organize your thoughts and find peace by organizing your interpretations of what they were or what they are going to be. And your explanation tonight about that the miracles bring collapsed time. And an interesting thing happened with regard to that. My experience was my mother, I get her products and things for the week on the week, Thursday or Friday, and I try to remember everything, and then I was going into hypothetical thinking, and we're processing it with Alan, this upset. And as we're processing it, he mentions some kind of sugar pill, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to get my mother her sugar pill. And it was like the miracle had like collapsed time. And he said there was no accident, and it's like that's just an example that I experienced like so recently, that what you're explaining, that the miracle, it collapses time, and I'm just so grateful. And I also wanted to share, may I share with you, the card came today.
Okay.
Beautiful.
And on the back it says, connect, don't project, project from David Hoffmeister, it says on the back.
Oh. Sweet. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Esther.
Thank
It's
you,
so
Esther.
beautiful. That's a great joy in my life, is I love the time collapse miracles. One of them that's just coming to mind was I was down in Australia, and I think I was a little bit I was kind of near Brisbane, the Gold Coast, and I was with my host who were hosting me, Raj and Sue's husband and wife, and they packed up all the supplies and the books and different things they were going to take, and to drive us to the center, which Raj had the key for. And Raj always liked to get to the center early, of course, to unlock the door, go inside, set the place up, and put everything out and welcome the people. So as we're driving these windy roads in the Gold Coast, he's driving, and his wife's sitting next to me in the back seat, and another friend of mine is in the front seat, and he looks at his watch, and he's driving one hand on the wheel, and he goes, oh no. He's like, oh my gosh, we're going to be late. He said, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I can't stand to be late. People are going to be upset. They're going to be outside the center, and I'm not there to open it up. I've got the key and everything. So he was starting to really beat himself up, mentally because of, he said, oh, and he said, I know I've driven this same route hundreds of times, and there's no way we're going to make it. We're going to be late. Well, his wife is sitting in the back seat, and they had a magazine that had published one of my articles called The Way of the Heart. And she's opening it up, and she's reading the article when he starts to go into this fear mode. And then she raises her eyes and she says, no, that's not at all right, Raj. David says right here, time is just a perception. It's not like a specific thing. And then he said, no, I've told you, I've driven this route many times, and we're going to be late for sure. And she was laughing in the back, saying, that's not at all what David says here, and I refuse to believe it. I will not join you in that belief that we'll be late. Well, the funny thing was, we pulled up there, and to Raj's astonishment, we were like 5 minutes early. He could not fathom it. But that's the belief that time is, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 160 seconds equals a minute, as if it's stationary. And of course, the physicists have done, they've done experiments with atomic clocks, putting one atomic clock on Earth and another in a supersonic plane that would circle the globe, and then they bring those synchronized atomic clocks together, and they don't tell at the same time. And we now know from black holes and how time and space is constructed that they're relative. That's what Einstein's whole theory of relativity was about. Einstein said, no, time is not a constant. Time is totally relative. And that's just a notion that it has to be questioned. So I like reading and seeing examples, and I've had so many miracles around collapse of time with people I've never met. That a guy on a plane, starts talking to me about time. We land, and he's got this whole story about time being completely relative. So thank you for sharing that and bringing that up, because I think that's part of what we're really open to now. We're open to be shown that time is relative, and so is space, and that the light that we are is the constant. The love is the constant. Thank you.
Okay, well, why don't we go to Mexico co-living with Angelica?
Hi, David.
Hi.
Hi. ¿Están bien? Sí, sí. Quiero... Quiero pedirte que me ayudes a orar.
I want you to ask me to pray. The ego has attacked me so hard all day. I just wanted that all this pain just gets pulled out of my heart. It's like a punishment in my mind. The belief that I did something very wrong last night. I exposed all the shit inside of me, all my grievances. There was not one perception that I was hiding. I released everything. I was handing over everything. And we finished the relationship. And all day I felt like an unbearable pain in my chest that I just wanted to go, to leave the rejection, the abandonment. And when it seems that I'm like coming back to the surface, now he tells me that he doesn't feel inspired to pay anything else financially for me, and that this month he's paying for me, and there's like another thing on top of that. And I know that the Spirit has provided for me many times, and he's given me many miracles. But it's like everything is just coming all at once. Everything is coming all at once. And it's too much. I just want this pain to leave. I don't know how to hand it all over. I don't know. I just want the light of Jesus to speak to me through you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your willingness, because in your willingness to not hide anything and not to push down anything or hold on to anything, that is how the release happens. And our trust deepens because we discover that we have very subtle, sometimes they're just unconscious beliefs about the future. And certainly with relationship and the care and the survival of the body, that is the ego's main game. That is its game. And when there are experiences that bring up this darkness, it can be very intense darkness, but that's the point of letting it move through, letting it come up and letting it move through. Because we can no longer compromise in our life and hold things in and hold things down. It takes too much energy to try to compromise in any way. So we're really still just starting out this month, and you are surrounded by your mighty companions that are joined with you in prayer and purpose. And it's as if you're just letting it come because you know that there is a safety there. It's a safety that can allow it to come up and move through. And as all the great teachers and saints have told us, that it's a purification of our desire. You know, we have believed and desired in many things, and now we come with wholly empty hands unto our God. When I was growing up, my grandmother Lillian was really a strong, mighty companion for me. And even though I was named after David in the Bible, I had read some and parts of the Bible. I didn't really know the Bible by heart, for sure. even the Psalms of David, I did not know. I knew bits, a line maybe, a phrase here and there. And then my grandmother would recite to me the 23rd Psalm from the Bible. And it starts off, the first line is, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And that's the first line in the 23rd Psalm. And to me, that was so profound because it reminded me that I just really want to know God, that's what my whole experience is about. That was early on, and I was not ready at that point to make a full commitment to devoting myself to God. But I could feel the peace come over me when she would start reciting the 23rd Psalm. She knew it by heart, and she would tell it to me many times, and I just let it go into my heart very softly and just start to feel that surrender. And I still had many things that I wanted from the world at that point, but she continued to remind me over and over, and I could see the peace in her eyes. And so that's really what you can come back to. You can actually just relax and surrender and just think of that. The Lord is my shepherd. Just the beginning of that beautiful psalm. Because a shepherd watches over the sheep and has great care for the sheep and has great care for their safety and their happiness. And that's really what this is. It sounds like you've been in the struggle or the confrontation all day, and then, as Francis shared earlier, if you just turn your mind toward whatever it is that you can recall or remember to feel gratitude for, that the gratitude is the light at the end of the tunnel calling you in. It's calling you to come. And if we just go back to that point of gratitude, we can think of anything in our mind that we have gratitude for and just start to focus your mind on that gratitude. That will bring a sense of peace and a sense of rest to you. So I join you tonight in that prayer to really trust in that.
Okay, David, well, we've just reached the top of the hour. There's a couple of hands remaining. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think we can close it off with two more, Luz and Christoph.
Sure. Okay, well, Christoph, you can unmute there first.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. I actually...
It's like 2:00 in Austria. I'm working as a psychotherapist, and like some years ago, very, very slowly, I started, or it started that I, at a certain point in my cognitive therapy, when it's about understanding someone in the direction of love, I started telling about the story Jesus on the cross, his last words, when he's asking Father to forgive the people because they just don't know what they are doing. And it felt always nice because I saw the effect on people, and they got the sense of the story, and And this became more with the topic of Jesus. I had no conscious connection. I was just using it like I'm telling a fairy tale or something. But I knew that these hours had a strong effect on myself. I always feel very happy about after the hour, you know. And when I came from Germany to Austria, somehow I'm very German, you know. My restrictions concerning the tools of psychotherapy and how to do it and what to tell, not to tell, that loosened somehow. And I started to bring more of what I remembered from the Bible into the sessions, and that was just fun and becoming more and more fun. And the session, what you described, the time collapsed, and I was so happy after it. And I was telling friends, I think somebody took like a joke. It must have been the Holy Ghost, you know. I was like, I'm joking, but it felt like it, but I was not daring to say so. Holy Ghost, like coming to me. No. But starting the course in December, I invited him more and more, you know, please do it. And like 2 days ago, I was doing it on my balcony because I do Zoom sessions now. And I heard so clearly, just relax, lay back, I'll do the thing. And it was 8 hours. And I was asking between, you're up for it? And yeah, do the thing, you know. And then we were together with Ken yesterday night. And you cited a sentence, David. Never correct a brother. And today I was working in the therapy center, and there's a beautiful woman. And of course, before the session, I asked him, you do it? And he said, you relax. And the woman sat down at the other side of the room, and I was preparing something with my iPhone, laid it down. But I started telling that I was together with Mighty Companions and David Hoffmeister yesterday. And I was still turning around in the room. She was sitting there. And I said, he cited something. And with this, I sat down. So we were directly in front of each other. And she asked me, and what was it? And I said, never correct a brother. And she said, wow. I said, wow. She said, I have goosebumps. And I said, yes, me too. She said, that's it. I said, yeah. And she said, I think I don't want to hear another word. I said, I know. And we stood up and hugged. And she went away. And this was within 3 minutes. And normally the therapy hour is 50 minutes, you know? So this was a very concrete time collapse. It was just so amazingly striking, the energy, you know? It was so beyond, it has to be 50 minutes, it has to be certain tools, you know? It was just one sentence, you know? And the thing is, this therapy is paid by the Catholic Church because she was for many years abused by a priest. So the church has to pay her therapy. And after the session, I stood there, wow, this institution took over the message of our Lord, you know, corrupted it, and brought her into that situation. And Jesus is coming in and just healing her with one sentence. That's fair. That's fair.
Wow.
It's a miracle.
Wow.
That's a miracle.
That was a miracle. That was a miracle.
That's beautiful.
Thank
Thank you. What a beautiful
Wow.
time
Thank
collapse
you.
miracle. from the early morning hours of Austria. We are all blessed all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, so sweet.
Mm.
Ooh, let's go to Luz de Garcia. You can unmute.
Thank you, Peter. Well, after...
Oh, you seem to have a bit of an echo. Do you have a speaker on there somewhere? Or...
Wait, just a second. I think that's okay. Oh, yeah, thank God. My tech abilities are limited. And my cat came to say hi, of course. After the morning session, a friend of mine came. We have been trading sessions. I practice polarity therapy hands-on. It's a hands-on healing. Really to get the energy unblocked and going. And he's an osteopath, chiropractor, body worker. Very talented, very sweet, and very, very loving. So yesterday I did a session on him, and today he was going to work on me. So I said, well, after the retreat, so I said, come at 1. By 1, I'm sure we're done. So he came, and I'm on the table, and I feel my neck a little bit stiff. So he says, okay, let me check your neck. And he's working on my neck and loosening. And suddenly he says, well, this is really out. Please relax. And immediately my thought was, I don't like it when they crack my neck. But sometimes it's so out that that's what you need. And I said, okay, I need to trust and let go. And in that moment, I saw myself in the hands of Jesus. I said, okay, Jesus, I'm in your hands, not in my friends. I'm in your hands always. And I really relaxed, and he cracked my neck. And the pain was so sharp, unlike any usual cracking. And I told him, you cannot adjust that way anymore. That's it. So he was just doing soft tractions and so. And I started going into a different space. And suddenly I saw myself as an infant. I was looking at wicker, lines of wicker about this big. And my neck was in a very weird position. I was a tiny baby. I was tied, my hands were tied. I was bundled up, we used to put babies like a taco, really you could move. So somehow I had moved against the side of that cradle thing, probably 3 months old, 2 months old, really a tiny baby. And my neck was in a position, and I felt that what he had adjusted started there. This was a complete collapse of time. From the moment I felt what he did went into place, and that triggered a situation when I was a tiny baby, and my neck was in a position that really hurt. And I cried and cried and cried and cried, and nobody came. Probably my mom thought, well, she's crying, so let her cry. It's good for her lungs. That was her phrase. It's good for your lungs. It's like walking in the park. But I felt connected to a memory of abandonment. Pain, and no one comes. And I knew I needed to let go of all this darkness that I was not aware was there. So I just surrendered into that, and the pain left. I just surrendered into this blackness, trusting that I am in the hands of God. But really, it was an experience of warmth that was a little story that happened sometime. But this morning, I was there and everything was fine, and I knew everything would always be fine. It was an incredible miracle. It was a healing thing from, I'm 76, that's 76 years ago, but I had the feeling that 76 years and 7 minutes and 7 seconds is the same. It's like nothing. It's like nothing. And I went into this very quiet place of acceptance of what is. And I felt very at peace with all the story of my life. It's one of the few times when I think of my mom and I was not angry. I had no hard feelings, I didn't feel it. It's just what happened. I was in a cradle. I was in a position that left an injury, a serious injury, because 76 years later it's triggered. But it was all for me to be able to bring it up and to put it in the altar and to know that we're always taken care of. We're always taken care of. In the most unsuspected of moments, I had this blessing of an experience. It was a collapse of time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Liz. That's a perfect way for us to close tonight, because I had mentioned to Esther that line from chapter 2, miracles correct retroactively and progressively. And that was a retroactive correction. In the moment, you felt the blessing, and then you had the flash of the wicker and the scene, and now it's part of the healing. So thank you. I love it when we have good examples to share and witness. So it's an honor. Yeah. Thank you. And I had to laugh when you were talking about the darkness, because your black cat was acting it out. He was giving the sound effects, and then he cut right across the screen when you were talking about the darkness. So, Stephen, I know you like that. You like those visceral kind of little things. Yeah, that'll be a highlight for you. There's a highlight. There's the black cat. It's like the Truman Show. There's the dented beetle. There's the dented beetle as it moves around in the Truman Show. Well, thank you, everyone. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
What a beautiful night. And I know it's going to be an amazing movie workshop tomorrow. So we'll be joined by a whole other group of people, as well as our community here. We have our workshop, our online retreat, and then another, what is it, Linda, maybe 80? No, 60? 30 more. Another 30 beloveds will come and join us. And I was inspired by, there's a music video that I'm going to play tomorrow morning. I think it's called Run to the Light, something like that. And then some of you are aware of these beautiful Jesus episodes that they're on season 2 now. It's called The Chosen. But there's 2, Kirsten and Svava, we have a couple tomorrow that are going to be so spectacular for you. So we're going to go into the life of Jesus with the chosen episodes. And some of you have seen the banner that we put out, which has a little boy and a little girl in a field of flowers. So that's one clue. And a little child shall lead them. So that will be one theme. And then, another is they're just amazing. So you're in for a treat tomorrow. I know you're going to have a huge healing and heart-opening experience. Watching our blessed brother Jesus show us the way, demonstrate to us the way, the truth, and the life. So have a good rest, and tomorrow we'll look for you, and we will have a wonderful experience together, a wonderful healing experience. God bless you.
God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's David. Our heart symbols. Heart eyes. We're sending our heart eyes to you, yes. Look, co-living, that's it. They're doing it in co-living too. Here comes Isa.
Oh, it's joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.